Why your thoughts loosen on days you move. Your brain becomes editable again. Rigid comparison loops start to soften. That hollow feeling you get after scrolling through someone else's life isn't a confidence problem. It's not even an emotional problem. Your brain is running someone else's code, and it doesn't know it. I noticed this on a Tuesday night. I'd just gotten home from my hour-long walk back from work, which, by the way, is my favorite part of the day. I walk instead of taking the subway because something about moving through the city on foot puts my thoughts back in order. It's like a slow defrag for my brain. Anyway, I sat down, made some tea, opened Instagram, and 20 minutes later, I felt like I'd accomplished nothing meaningful in my entire life. Not sad exactly, just flattened. Like someone had quietly lowered the volume on everything I cared about. The strange part was that nothing bad had happened. My day was fine. My work was fine. I'd actually solved a tricky calibration issue at the office that I'd been stuck on for days. I build software for medical devices, blood glucose monitors, ketone meters, the kind of instruments that have to measure things with uncomfortable precision. So I spend my days making sure data is clean, signals are accurate, and noise doesn't corrupt the reading. And yet there I was, letting the noisiest possible input, a curated highlight reel of strangers, completely corrupt my own signal. That's when I started paying attention, not to what I was feeling, but to when and how it happened. I kept a loose log for about 2 weeks. Nothing fancy. Just notes on my phone after I caught myself in that post-scroll fog, and a pattern showed up pretty quickly. The feeling wasn't random. It had a structure. It almost always hit harder at night, when I was already a little tired and my defenses were lower. It almost always followed exposure to a very specific type of content. Not just pretty pictures, but evidence of someone else's momentum, someone launching something, someone celebrating a milestone, someone whose life seemed to have a clear upward trajectory, while mine felt like it was buffering. Here's what got interesting, though. The same exact post, say, someone's career update, would barely register if I saw it at 8 in the morning, with coffee in my hand and sunlight coming through the window. But at 10 p.m., after a long day, that same post could send me into a 30-minute loop of questioning every major decision I'd made in the last 3 years. Same information, completely different emotional output. That told me something important. The problem wasn't the content. The problem was the state of the system receiving it. In my work, we deal with something called signal-to-noise ratio. When you're measuring blood glucose, the actual glucose reading is the signal. Everything else, temperature fluctuations, sensor drift, electrical interference, that's noise. And if the noise gets loud enough, the device can't tell the difference anymore. It starts treating noise as signal. It starts making decisions based on garbage data. I think that's what social media does to the brain's reward system. It floods the channel with so much external comparison data that your internal evaluation system, the part of you that knows what matters to you, what you've built, what you're working toward, gets drowned out. Your brain starts treating someone else's achievement as your own failure, not because you decided to, because the circuitry got overwhelmed. I read somewhere that the brain has this mechanism, a reward prediction error, where it constantly compares what you expected to happen with what actually happened. It's how you learn. It's how you feel satisfaction. But social media turns that mechanism into a weapon against you because it keeps feeding you outcomes you never expected and achievements you never planned for. And your brain keeps registering the gap between their results and your current position as a personal shortfall. It's like having an external debugger attached to your system, except the debugger is evaluating your code using someone else's success criteria. Of course, it's going to flag everything as broken. So I tried something. I didn't delete my apps. I didn't do a digital detox or announce some dramatic break from social media. Honestly, I've tried that before. It lasted about 4 days before I was back, feeling even worse, because now I'd also failed at quitting. What I did instead was much smaller. I started consuming without reacting. No likes, no saves, no mental comparisons. I treated my feed the way I'd treat raw sensor data at work. Observe it. But don't let it trigger any downstream processing. Just watch. It felt weird at first, almost pointless. But after about a week, something shifted. The post-scroll fog started getting thinner, not because I was seeing less content, but because my brain was slowly learning that this input didn't require an emotional response. I was decoupling the stimulus from the reaction, and the gap between seeing someone else's life and feeling bad about mine started to widen into something more like neutral space. The second thing I tried was harder to explain, but I think more important. I started walking a little faster on my way home. I added some short runs. Nothing impressive. Sometimes literally 3 minutes before I'd stop and walk again, feeling slightly embarrassed, but also slightly alive. And what I noticed was this. On the days I moved my body with even a little bit of effort, my brain seemed more flexible. Not happier, necessarily, but less sticky. Thoughts moved through, instead of getting caught in loops. I couldn't obsess as efficiently about what everyone else was doing, because my mind had been gently shaken loose. There's this protein, BDNF, that your brain produces when you do something physically or cognitively challenging. I think of it like the brain's permission slip for rewiring. Without it, your neural pathways stay rigid. You keep running the same comparison loops over and over. With it, there's this brief window where the circuits become editable, where you can actually write new patterns instead of replaying old ones. I can't prove that this is exactly what was happening to me, but the correlation between movement days and quieter mental evenings was hard to ignore. The last piece was the strangest. I started keeping a tiny log, not of outcomes, not of accomplishments, but of process. What did I actually do today? Not what did it lead to, not how it compared to anyone, just what did I do, and what did I notice while doing it? Some days the entry was embarrassingly mundane. Fixed a data parsing bug, walked home, made rice, felt calm. But over time, reading those entries back, I started to feel something unexpected. My sense of self stopped depending on external benchmarks. It started anchoring to my own rhythm, my own observations, my own quiet experiments. And I want to be honest, I still have nights where I scroll too long and wake up feeling like I've fallen behind some invisible race I never signed up for. It's not fixed. Maybe it doesn't get fixed. Maybe it just gets managed. The way I manage glucose data at work, not by eliminating noise because you can't, but by building a system that recognizes noise for what it is and doesn't let it corrupt the reading. You're not broken. You're not weak for feeling small after looking at someone else's highlight reel. Your brain is just doing what brains do, comparing, predicting, flagging gaps. The problem isn't the comparison. The problem is that right now, every comparison has a direct line to your emotional core, and there's no filter in between. So maybe the goal isn't to stop comparing. Maybe it's to build a little distance between the comparison and the feeling, to let the data come in, observe it, and then let it pass without updating your entire self-image. That's not positivity. That's not mindset work. That's just debugging, quiet, patient, slightly boring debugging. And honestly, some of the most important repairs I've ever made, in code and in life, are exactly that boring.